Superhero stories since the beginning have made one thing very clear. Being rich is a superpower. The very first fictional character to add a sense of fashion and flair to their attempts to make things right, the Scarlet Pimpernel, was a rich Englishman who rescued rich French folks during the French Revolution. Since then, the rich person playing dress-up to punch criminals had to be more discreet as a class warrior for the elite by at least putting some effort into protecting everyone. Bruce Wayne was born into his wealth, which he used to take a very long gap year learning ninjutsu and detectiving and then gearing himself up to become the Dark Knight. Mark Spector, the Moon Knight, got his wealth by investing money made as a mercenary under the persona of financier Stephen Grant. Like Bruce Wayne's playboy personality, Spector uses the persona of Grant as a cover and a way to gain access that no one would associate with superheroism. Any new iteration of the Batmobile comes with the anticipation for what the Batmobile will look like. Batman's hit the road with everything from a modified red convertible to a full-on tank. Batman is cool, but the Batmobile really seals the deal. And that's just Bat's signature ride. He's got a collection of rides that even Flo from Geico wouldn't bundle insurance for. Moon Knight keeps it a little simpler. The Mooncopter wasn't really much of a helicopter as much as it was a floating symbol of Khonshu, but lately that's pared down to a glider drone and a custom limousine, both of which can operate autonomously. It's hard to spark fear in the hearts of evildoers with an all-white limousine, the official ride of Junior Prom, but it does have the advantage of being more subtle. No one wants to make eye contact with unsupervised teenagers in a limo. Home is where the heart is. It's also where you keep the giant penny that someone used to try and kill you in a way too elaborate manner. When you've been stalking the streets of Gotham since the Golden Age, you're gonna run into a whole lot of weird. Just like his DC counterpart, Mark Spector's mansion is more than meets the eye. On top of the usual basement full of crime-fighting science and a gym that's every CrossFit practitioner's dream, the mansion itself is built with Prohibition-era passageways and hidden rooms for extra measure. Spector keeps it more on theme. Branding is everything. You can't just wrap your head in a piece of cloth and get a cool hero name. You need a gimmick. Batman? Obviously. Bats. Everything's bats. Batmobile, Batwing, Batcycle, Batarang, Bat Shark Repellent, which is just a shark repellent that he put a bat label on. We're onto you, Batman. When people make the Batman-Moon Knight comparisons, the cape and the gear are two of the biggest things people point to. Where Batman uses Batarangs, Moon Knight uses crescent darts or even a hieroglyph-encrusted boomerang. Moon Knight's truncheon can also be fired off like Batman's grappling gun. Moon Knight's gadgetry has a twist in it that was handed down to him as an ancient set of weapons from Khonshu that were designed by Hawkeye 5,000 years ago when the West Coast Avengers went to the past. Or reinvented them? Time travel makes things complicated. There are a lot of people with big capes who stalk the night looking for ways to serve justice, usually by punching someone really hard. A lot of heroes adopt that hero life because they accidentally acquired superpowers and had a relative who could sum up their moral philosophy in an easy-to-remember phrase. When people get the superpower rich, they don't tend to become a superhero, which is probably for the best. It takes more than just an uncle with an evolved sense of right and wrong. You need to do something, like have your parents shot in front of you. That gave Batman an obsession with justice and more than a little focus on vengeance. Mark Spector didn't wait for anything as pedestrian as all that. Instead, he himself was killed by an unscrupulous anthropologist and then raised by the god of the moon to become the Fist of Khonshu, giving him an edict from the god who resurrected him to follow. Every superhero needs a little help from their friends. Whether it's some backup in the field or the all-important person in the chair, you need someone who can get kidnapped or comment to you at the end of a long night of crime fighting that you'll have to give up the life eventually. For Batman, those duties were split between his butler Alfred Pennyworth and Robin the Boy Wonder. Alfred keeps up the man cave and Robin helps with the punching and kicking. Mark Spector puts two great tastes together in his longtime pal Jean-Claude Duchamp, famous for his Dadaist and surreal art— no, wait, that's Marcel Duchamp. Jean-Claude Duchamp is a fellow mercenary who was there for the whole Khonshu thing and stuck with him even after Spector's brother blew up Mark's mansion, taking Duchamp's legs. Don't worry, he got robot legs. He's got his own thing going on as the living memory of the Knights Templar. Batman's origin story is so well known that at this point we're basically begging every new portrayal of Batman to skip it. The image of Bruce Wayne's parents getting shot in Crime Alley complete with falling pearls has to be one of the most replicated scenes in media. It provides important lessons. Don't leave the movie early, and not just because you'll miss the post-credits scene. And when you do, don't go through the door that leads to a place called Crime Alley. I mean, it's in the name. The death of Bruce's parents is a motivating factor for Batman. Mark Spector's dead dad is more of a lost opportunity. Mark's father Isaiah actually had Mark interned at a mental health facility. When his father died, Spector, being Jewish, was allowed to sit Shiva and, at the prodding of Khonshu, skipped out to fulfill his destiny. Batman was not bitten by a radioactive bat. He didn't experiment with bat DNA in the hopes of, I don't know, giving people the ability to echolocate. He was not visited by a bat-like alien species and made into a bat-themed representative here on Earth. No, Bruce Wayne is just afraid of bats and figures since that's pretty much the only thing that scares him, it probably scares criminals too, seeing as they're a cowardly and superstitious lot. And to serve that purpose, Batman leans in hard to the bat theme. He doesn't just dress with flair, he makes sure that his encounters are as terrifying for the people he's hunting as possible. Moon Knight takes the moon theme so far that his gear and clothing is all white. This seems like an obvious flaw for someone trying to skulk in the night, but when you ask him, the white suit is a feature, not a bug. He wants them to see him coming. Gadgets and sweet rides are a handy tool to defeat bad guys, but without real superpowers, when it comes time to do the punching and the kicking, you're gonna need some skills. Bruce Wayne, of course, traveled the world, eventually getting trained from the League of Assassins. Mark Spector spent his life fighting as well, just without as much specific focus. Dealing with anti-Semitism as a child, including a World War II criminal hiding in his neighborhood, he learned to box. He would later join the Marines and then the CIA before taking his skills to the open market. Both paths lead to someone whose punching and kicking skills are top-notch. In order to get the title of World's Greatest Detective, you have to have a particular set of skills. You know the kind. Not just the punchy-kicky skills, but the skills needed to find the right people to punch and kick. Literature's World's Greatest Detective, Sherlock Holmes, solves his mysteries in part by being something of an expert in just about everything. That's what Bruce Wayne learned in his years abroad training to become Knight and Vengeance. Mark Spector learned his skills by having a hard-knock life and heading straight towards dangerous situations until he was killed and had to be revived by a moon god. Different paths to the same destination. Though how that manifests itself is yet another similarity that's actually a key difference between the two. You don't get to dressing up in a massive cape and mask with a bunch of themed weapons and gadgets and roaming the streets looking for other people in crazy get-ups to foil with there being a little damage along the way. Bruce Wayne hit one very traumatic setback, seeing his parents shot before his eyes. This started the lifelong quest for justice in a very specific way. Over the years, we learned what a toll that takes on Wayne's psyche. During an episode of Batman Beyond, the elderly Wayne knows when someone else is controlling his thoughts because his inner voice refers to him as Bruce, and not Batman. That kind of break is not that deep below the surface for Mark Spector. Like any good former spy and mercenary, Spector uses a collection of aliases. But unlike people with aliases, these aliases have become full-on personalities as part of Spector's dissociative personality disorder. This issue actually appeared long before Spector's meeting with Khonshu, which has meant that Spector can never really be sure if the whole Khonshu thing really happened, or if he imagined it. The truth is frustratingly a little in between. Before we get too precious with who ripped off who, we might want to look at what might have influenced Batman in the same way that Batman influenced Moon Knight. What started as a menacing voice introducing a crime anthology on radio, author Walter B. Gibson turned The Shadow into a menacing enemy of crime for pulp fiction magazines, and then back to radio as a long-running show. This early hero even got down with recognizable catchphrases, mostly about things the Shadow knows, like what evil lurks in the heart of men and the weed of crime bearing bitter fruit. Like Bruce Wayne and Mark Spector, the Shadow's alter ego spent time abroad learning certain tricks and techniques that he brought home to fight crime in a carefully constructed persona. In the Shadow's case, he had assumed the identity of Lamont Cranston as a man about town, a 30s term for idle rich people. In reality, he was war vet Kent Allard, who forced Cranston to share his identity. Just like Spector and Wayne, the pulp Shadow doesn't have any powers other than Cranston's wealth, but uses exotic techniques to simulate them. For radio, the Shadow gained the power to cloud men's minds to make him invisible. The Shadow skipped out on the big cape, instead favoring an Inverness coat that conceals his twin .45 pistols. But his influence on super detectives that stalk the night is felt through Batman to Mark Spector, especially the latter's multiple aliases. If there's one thing we can count on after somebody gives the "I'm a lone wolf, people who get near me get hurt, I walk a hard line alone" speech, it's that they're about to team up with someone. Loners are terrible at being loners. Batman has had no less than 5 Robins under increasingly bizarre circumstances. Not only that, but he's been part of at least 2 different versions of the Justice League. Even though he'll sometimes feign that he's not really part of the Justice League, just on call, Batman has really always been part of the holy trinity of DC heroes and Justice League members that includes Superman and Wonder Woman. Likewise, Spector has Frenchie and a collection of close associates that he relies on. Just like Wayne, he also insists he's not a joiner, but then promptly joins the Marines, the CIA, the West Coast Avengers, Defenders, Heroes for Hire, and even the morally ambiguous Committee to Fight Werewolf by Night. Isn't that all werewolves? One thing that both Bruce Wayne and Mark Spector have adopted from the Shadow is a hard line when it comes to crime, though Wayne and Spector pull back a little bit. It wasn't uncommon for the Shadow's encounters to end with the bad guys dying. Bruce Wayne has adopted a strict no-killing policy, while Spector is more of an avoid-killing if possible stance. Neither of them have a no-causing lifelong injuries policy, though. Whether you encounter the guy in Moon White or Shades of Grey and Black, if you choose violence, the beating you'll get will likely leave you with an injury that comes with a lifetime of rehabilitation. Gotham and Moon Knight's New York have to have a whole lot of people on disability from vigilante-related injuries. Batman's only superpower, technically, is that he's rich, and he happens to be extraordinarily athletic as well as incredibly smart and particularly motivated. For someone rushing a deadline, that can seem like a superpower. The question of Moon Knight's superpowers is kind of open-ended. Just like Spector's confidence he actually met Khonshu, powers granted by Khonshu have been a little come and go. When they've manifested, he's gotten power from the moon that's allowed him to lift up to 2 tons. Eventually, he's lost those powers, but he can still rely on his life of training and all that sweet gear his Stephen Grant personality can buy him. Bruce Wayne's outfit might be more subtle than Moon Knight's all-white getup, but only by a little. Batman's outfit is designed to make a lasting impression. Both Wayne and Spectre want criminals to know that crime means punchy-kicky justice. Sometimes, though, you need to make a more subtle entrance. For that, they have to resort to the age-old art of disguise, a master detective staple going all the way back to Sherlock Holmes. When Spectre needs a personality less visible than Grant, he takes on Jake Lockley, a cab driver with access to streets while being essentially invisible. Spectre, with his dissociative personality disorder, overcommits to his disguises a bit. If Batman is anything, it's prepared. He has a contingency for everything, including a situation where he might have to take down his super powerful Justice League teammates. That list of contingencies has gotten away from him before and used against his teammates whose shock that he had plans to beat them was only matched by Batman's shock that they hadn't come up with a plan to beat him should they have to. In various storylines, Batman has been called to rein in his teammates or go against them entirely. Spectre was forced to steal the powers of Iron Fist, Doctor Strange, Ghost Rider, and Thor in order to get Khonshu out of a bind with Mephisto. Here's the thing about vigilante justice. It's a terrible idea. Organized justice can be flawed, but also can or at least should be held accountable to the community it serves. A vigilante just does what they want. Short of setting up their own prison and court system, which would be a level of crazy too far, the costumed vigilante needs someone with recognized authority to make the crime-solving stick, or someone in law enforcement that needs that freelance help that a costumed vigilante can provide. Sherlock had Inspector Lestrade, Batman has Commissioner Gordon, and Moon Knight has Detective Flint. Though, after Moon Knight was taped doing what Moon Knight does best to a criminal while working for Detective Flint, he was fired. You take risks when you hire someone with a mask. Batman famously has a massive computer built into the walls of the Batcave that works the way we wish our voice assistants worked. Instead of getting sassy pants when I try and set an alarm, Batman can order his computer to do complex operations sorting data by wide parameters or analyzing the chemical compounds of the crazy nonsense he finds, as well as magic hacker access to whatever he needs. Spectre goes more old school and assembles a shadow council of experts from criminologists, scientists, and even ex-cons. The downside, of course, being far more sassy pants responses. Whether you're Bruce Wayne, Mark Spector, Tony Stark, or even Kent Howard pretending to be Lamont Cranston, when your superpower is money, one thing you can do is make sure that you never get beat the same way twice. People with superpowers can use them as a one-size-fits-all solution. The humans with gear have to sometimes upgrade and adjust their gear to the situation. Batman has a variety of suits he's employed for specific circumstances and will frequently come up with something to specifically nullify the advantage his current foe uses, something that Spectre is no stranger to. While this is a similarity, it's also the charm of the regular person heroes, that they adapt and overcome incredible odds. Batman doesn't beat up Superman because that's something that would reasonably happen, but because it allows us to feel like with enough training and dedication, we could beat the unbeatable.